bringing Gator Nation a different Gator great every episode.
This is Jabari Gaffney, and you're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey, I'm Rita Anthony.
This is Kewan Ratliff.
Hey, I'm Carlos Alvarez.
This is Jeff Dempsey.
This is Ricky the Rocket Natil.
This is Brandon James.
This is Cedric Faison, a.k.a. C4.
This is Taylor Jacobs. Go Gators.
This is University of Florida Gator great Lewis Oliver. Lock us in, guys.
Hey, I'm Earl Everett. If you're not a Gator, you're Gator baby.
Only Gators get out alive.
Hello, this is Eric Rick. Go Gators.
Hi, this is Ernest Graham.
This is Chris Doring.
This is Jaden Ball.
Hey, this is Trace Armstrong.
This is Brad Culpepper, and you're listening to Best Podcast on the Air.
Hey, guys, this is Jarvis Marks.
You're either all for the Gators or you're not.
Go Gators.
You're rocking with Lito Shepherd, and we're all for the Gators podcast, man. Top notch.
And now, your Gator alumni hosts, John, Andy, and Sid.
Well, guys, today's guest has done it all. One of the most decorated defensive linemen in UF history, a successful attorney with his own practice, even became a reality TV star. And it all started at Leon High in Tallahassee, where he was a standout multi-sport athlete. He had the UF legacy in his blood. And as a Gator, would go on to wreak havoc on SEC quarterbacks and running backs. And by the time he was done, he would set the all-time mark for tackles for losses by a defensive lineman in UF history. He'd go on to a stellar 9-year NFL career, and in 6 years with the Bucs, he led them in sacks twice and tackles for D linemen 4 times, and he ended his time in Tampa 11 yards away from the Super Bowl. Then he went back to UF, got his law degree, and then almost won Survivor. Gator Nation, I give to you 4-time SEC Academic Honor Roll, 2-time All-SEC, 1991 team captain, Draddy Trophy Award winner, that's like the academic Heisman, and consensus first-team All-American and SEC champion, UF Athletics Hall of Famer, and SEC legend with number 50 on his chest in the orange and blue, John Broward. You know him as Brad Culpepper.
God, I need to bring you on the road with me whenever I go anywhere. And by the road, I mean like going to Publix.
He's quite the hype man, isn't he? That's great.
Yes. That's fantastic. I'm telling you, when I go in the courtroom, I need that.
Man, it's such an honor to have you on with us today. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Listen, you guys are Gators. You're good people. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Now, your father and uncle played for the Gators. Grandfather is a prominent alum. How does a UF legacy end up being born and going to high school in Tallahassee?
Yeah, go figure. But quite frankly, I think the fact that I did that and I grew up in Seminole land, it made me, loathe them so much that it was a pretty easy decision when I was trying to figure out where to go to school. So maybe had I grown up in Gainesville or somewhere else, I'd have been like, I'm sick of the Gators, let me go somewhere else. But that wasn't the case. But it was, it was early on, so I was born in '69, so I really started kind of following football probably when I was, 9 or 10 years old. And at that point, the Gators were terrible. I think they were 0-10-1 with Larry Ochab and Doug Dickey. But I was still a Chris Collinsworth fan and Scotty Brantley.
Nice.
But FSU were great. They had Ron Simmons and they went undefeated, went to the Orange Bowl. So it was hard not to be a little bit of a Seminole fan in the early 80s. But then the Gators kind of got on top in the mid-'80s, and of course, when I got to Florida in '87, we had a dry spell against FSU until my senior year. But anyway, growing up in Tallahassee actually galvanized me as a Gator more so than not.
Interesting.
Well, and quite frankly, at that time, it's like the Tallahassee Player of the Year so Clifford Charlton was the first, and he went to Florida. He was Player of the Year. Then I think a guy named Tony Jones, who I played with, was a defensive back. He was from Rickards, Player of the Year in Tallahassee. He went to Florida. Then Tony Lomack was Player of the Year at Leon High School, and he went to Florida. And then I went the next year, and then not long after that, Kevin Carter came down. So there used to be
a pipeline.
quite a pipeline from Tallahassee into Gainesville.
They couldn't recruit, huh?
Yeah,
right.
Bobby couldn't keep the hometown kids.
No, they need to get that again.
In high school there, you played a lot more than just football. What other sports did you play? And then also kind of when did you realize you were going to go the football route?
Did my good friends razz you guys about asking me that? Everybody gives me a hard time because I always talk about baseball. They're like, "Oh, don't let them," or my kids will do that, and they'll say, "Oh, I hear Dad talks about baseball again."
Pitcher?
I was a pitcher. I won. I started on varsity as an 8th grader at Maclay High School, then went to Leon as a freshman. Ended up winning I won 45 games as a pitcher in high school and varsity. So I could throw it 90, and we went to the state Final Four 2 out of 4 years, and I love baseball. Of course, it's a lot of fun shagging balls and lying about girls you're getting with during baseball practice than it is, football practice. I had a guy named Gene Cox was the toughest, meanest. I'm telling you, I played 20 years of football, and my hardest 4 years were at Leon High School. There's no doubt about it.
Wow.
I mean, if we had a game on Friday, this is in the 80s, so there would be a game on Friday, obviously Saturdays off, Sundays off. Monday we'd be in half pads. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, full pads. And we had, during school, in first period, you had to take PE, which was football, so we did half pads of special teams every morning, first period, but we did bull in the ring every day. We did hamburger drills every day. We had one water break and a 3-hour practice. I remember one of the greatest days I had at Florida was when my first practice down there, and I couldn't believe that there were, water was available anytime you wanted. I was like, and they had these water camels, basically that they sprayed water out, and I was like, tell me this again. Hold on. So you're saying, like, in the middle of this drill, I can go get water? And they're like, yes, you need to drink water as much as you can. I was like as much as I can, anytime I want. I go,
sounds like you survived Junction Boys with Bear Bryant or something.
No, it was great. If they'd have told me that was the way they were doing it, I'd have committed as a freshman. I mean, I can get all the water. That was my NIL. I was like, you mean I can get all the water I want during practice? I'm in. I'm there.
Well, we recently had rushing king Eric Redd on the show. So we got to know, did you guys ever get it on in the mat, either in high school or your time in UF or maybe in the pros in Tampa?
You got some faulty info there. While I could wrestle, I did not wrestle. I was on the weightlifting team. But Leon actually didn't. I don't even know if they had a wrestling team. I don't know that I would have done it because it would have run into baseball season. I did throw the shot put for 2 years, but I'll tell you that go back to Gene Cox. So in the off season, talk about wrestling. We would go back to back and we'd wrestle in this old gym, and you had to, once you got on top of somebody, you had to punch him in the gut to toughen him up, and he'd always pick me against the biggest guy. And I was on varsity as a freshman, so I'm 14 years old going against 18-year-olds. A guy named Chris Miller who went to FSU, he'd always patch me up with that guy, and he had a full beard in high school. Oh my God. So anyway,
we all do one of those.
We wrestled every day. No, Eric Rett was a great wrestler. In fact, there was another guy on our team when we got out to Florida, a guy named Willie McGrady. And Willie McGrady, you guys probably don't know anything about this guy. And what I'm telling you, go watch the Alabama-Florida Emmitt Smith game his freshman year, okay? And there's a fullback, number 38. His name's Willie McGrady. And unfortunately, Willie's passed. And I think he died, I don't know, maybe in the 90s at some time. But Willie played 1 year. He was a freshman brother of mine. And this guy was a state champ at Palatka maybe 4 years in a row. He would have whooped Eric Rett. He would have whooped anybody on the team. There are a few guys that I've ever met that could have gone straight to the pros out of high school, right? Pro football. Willie McGrady was one of them. So he came to Florida as a nose guard, was about 6 foot, 245. And I shouldn't ill wish on anybody, but had he not gotten injured after his freshman year, I don't know that I'd ever seen the field. He played. Wow. He didn't start at nose guard, but he started at fullback with Emmitt. And if you watch that film of Alabama, all you got to do is Google it. You'll see number 38, and he's killing people fullback blocking. I mean, Emmitt got 200 yards or whatever he did. It was his breakout game, and it was all because of Willie McGrady. And he also played about 25 snaps of nose guard that game. The guy was unbelievable, and he was the wrestling champ of Florida. I don't even think it was just wrestling. And that guy, I mean, he was a legend amongst us. And unfortunately, he hurt his neck after his freshman year, probably because he hit people so hard, and he never played again. But anyway, that's a small story about back in the day.
Well, when you get to Gainesville, it's Galen Hall's Gators, right? Defense and Emmitt. And when you get there, are you playing D-line? Did they recruit you for that? Because we've heard a lot of stories about players just being athletes and they've changed positions. And so, what was the competition like for you when you first got there, and what position were you at?
Okay, so it's a little bit more of a complex story than that. I've had a lot of crazy stuff happen. in 8th grade, before I went to Leon High School, we used to have a stilt house on Dog Island, which is in the Panhandle up on the Gulf Coast. And I was pulling a seine net around back when they were legal and pulling in a bunch of things. And as I'm pulling it, my knee locked up. So come to find out, the bottom half of my femur, this is in 8th grade, 15 years old, it broke off in the middle of my knee. So for 6 months, I had to wear a brace, and they had to put 6 pins in my knee. Anyway, so it delayed my football for high school, but I started lifting weights and everything started working out. My senior year in baseball, we were in the state championship game, and I start getting severe fevers, and my back is killing me. And to the point where they had to put me in Shands. Well, come to find out, I had osteomyelitis, which is a disease that it could have killed me. So I was in Shands. They misdiagnosed it for months. As a senior, I was a 5-star recruit. I was probably 6'3", 255. And this osteomyelitis I got right before my freshman year, I went down, I got anemia, and I stayed in Shands for 3 weeks. Then I had to get home IV care for another 3 weeks. So I showed up at Florida as a freshman. Actually, I missed the first 2 weeks of camp because I was, trying to recoup. But I lost about a half inch in height, maybe an inch in height, because it kind of ate through my spine. But they caught it, and they gave me Keflex and all kinds of stuff to fight it. But I showed up at 205. And so I'll never forget, the first day I was there, everybody had already been there about 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And Galen introduced me and said, hey, we got our other freshman here. And everybody's looking at me like, that guy? He looks terrible. So anyway, I spent my whole first 2 months in the carrot suit, which is basically just in warm-ups. I wasn't big enough. So had I not had this sickness and showed up at 205, I think I would have probably ended up an offensive guard or center. I was first team All-State as a tackle, offensive tackle, defensive tackle. But because I was so small, I actually gained a lot of quickness, and I put my weight back on much better from, so by the end of the freshman year, I was probably 225 or 235, and I was pretty lean and looked good. But it's like I gained a lot of quickness by getting small again. So by the next year, my redshirt freshman year, I was probably, 245 and was cat quick and backed up Jeff Roth, and I guess I never looked back as a defensive lineman since then. That's a long answer to a short question.
No, that sounds eerily familiar, like the Jarvis Moss story.
Yes.
We've had Jarvis on.
Told us this is very similar. That
he was very ill and had a lot of physical...
misdiagnosed injury.
Yeah, at the beginning of his career. Yeah. And they found out it was a staph infection eventually.
Yeah, it was real similar to that. The osteomyelitis was like a staph type situation.
Trace Armstrong was just leaving as you're getting there. We had him on, and he told us he could tell you were going to be special. He knew early you were going to be special. Did you have a chance to kind of watch him, learn anything from him, or was there someone that kind of took you under their wing when you were first there as an underclassman?
Correct. We actually did to each other. We were in both each other's weddings, so
oh wow.
Trace and I go way back. So Trace came over for senior year because it was crazy at Arizona State, and he got there, I guess it was 88, and it was my redshirt freshman year, and I had already been there, and so I kind of showed him the ropes of Gainesville, and he showed me the ropes with football. He was a fantastic. He's got 100 sacks in the NFL. That tells you how good this guy is. So, but no, absolutely, he took under his wing. He kind of taught me, how to be a college football player and what it took, and he had a great work ethic. But anyway, I introduced Trace to his wife, Tam. She was my big sister in my fraternity, and Trace was a great player and a great pro player, and super sharp and has done extremely well. And more importantly, he's got fantastic kids that are all super successful.
Yeah, in the last question.
Hold on, before you ask your question. Yeah, you might have a bad connection where you're at, Brad. I don't know if it'll transfer to the recording.
I've just been sitting down. I can go to a different part of the house.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about 1990. Huge year for you. Huge year for Florida. Spurrier arrives. The Gators go 9-2. We finished 13th, number 1 in the SEC. But because of the probation, you're technically not champions. Although we know about the famous rings that Coach Spurrier made for you. So you were in second team All SEC. It's a different team, different culture. What do you remember about Spurrier's arrival? And did you notice the change right away?
First thing I think about in 1990 is Danny Rawlings. You guys know who that is?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately.
I lived in Gatorwood.
Unfortunately, yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. So anyway, Steve came in, in that spring, and we needed a new situation. It was a fresh start, and he obviously had a reputation as an offensive guru. At winning a ACC at Duke is that's a tall order. Yeah. And he came down and found Shane Matthews off the trash heap and made him an All SEC Player of the Year and everything else. But we really galvanized as a team during that summer camp. We essentially ended up being the only people in Gainesville for about 2 weeks because, the Danny Rawling murders were happening. And it was scary. Every night you'd hear the next day, somebody got beheaded and somebody died. And then, they killed a guy named Manny Taboda, I think was his name, but he was a big dude. And Steve, the only time we didn't have to sneak girls into Yon Hall, he was like, right. Hey guys, get your girlfriends, bring them into the dorm, let's keep safe. Yeah. But I'm telling you, for 2 weeks, we were the only people in Gainesville, and we practiced, twice a day. And I don't know, we kind of bonded, it's kind, I don't know if it's morbid or not, but I mean, it's kind of like because of that, crazy situation, I think it made us all kind of closer. Because we all kind of were scared, kind of thinking, man, what, this is crazy. Every day you wake up and somebody else has been murdered. But anyway, we played, I think it was Oklahoma State or somebody the first game, and we just rolled them Shane had, I don't know, 4 or 5 touchdowns, and we're like, oh my God, what, we were used to having to, hold a team to, 10 points to be able to win with Donald Douglas and whoever else. But oh my God, Steve brought it in, and I think Steve would go down and say that 90 team was maybe his favorite team, or head to head with 96. I mean, obviously, that's the championship team, but he loved the 90 team, and I think he loved us because we were buying what he was selling. Right. He came in and said, guys, we're going to win the SEC. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's what we're going to do. And, he didn't mess with the defense that much. He brought in new coaches, but he kind of, the guys who had been starting before kind of ended up starting then. But we loved it. We had a great offense, and unfortunately, we got, blamed, or we got punished, I should say. We didn't get blamed for things that had happened, 3 and 4 years before. And they took away our SEC championship, even though I guess we call it the best in the SEC. But no, that was a special year, special time. And I think that started the Gator dynasty, that of course we need to get back now. But from 1990 to maybe 2010, I guess the end run of Urban's reign, the 1990 team started it all. There's no doubt about it.
We've got a bunch of guys on from the Spurrier era, some really good Spurrier impressions, and of course good Spurrierisms. Do you have an impression of the old ball coach, and maybe a story for us from Spurrier time?
I just remember the first spring game. He's like, all right, we got the orange and the blue. All right, the winner, and he wrote up on the board. The loser gets beans, and he wrote beans, and he goes, the winner, he wrote them, and it was kind of like Animal House, and he goes, the winners get steak and shrimps, and he smelled shrimps like SCHRIMPS, and shrimp is like deer, it's like shrimp is plural. But anyway, Kirkpatrick kind of looked at me, and I was like, let's go eat some shrimp. But anyway, loser gets beans, and winners, you get all the scripts you want.
That's a pretty good one.
But he's from Tennessee. He's from Tennessee, so we can cut him some slack. I mean, he's doing the best he can.
Yeah, that's true. So after that 90 season, your redshirt junior season, do you start having thoughts of maybe a pro careers on the horizon there?
No.
Not yet?
Never.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I didn't really think about it until I was done. No, I was successful. I didn't really think about it. I don't know. I'd kind of always thought, okay, I'm going to go to Florida. My dad's an attorney, and I'll probably end up going to law school. I met, hottest chick at Florida who became the homecoming queen, and married her, Monica. So I kind of was just thinking about football, and then it kind of just happened. I didn't really think about it, like I feel like someone like Trace would have been like, yeah, I'm going to go be a pro and all that stuff like that. I don't know. It's just like, I didn't really think about it until I got after my senior year, and I'm like, I didn't get invited to the combine, but I did work out for teams. It's funny, I worked out for the Bucs, and I guess they didn't want anything to do with me till a couple of years later. But I'd never heard from the Vikings at all. And back then they had 12 rounds, and they took me in the 10th round. And even when I got up there, I was backing up a guy named Johnny Randall, who happened to be halfway decent.
Oh yeah,
Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Speaking of the Bucs,
war paint.
No, speaking of the Bucs, Johnny Randall, he was not drafted out of Texas A&I, which is Texas A&M Kingsville now, and Johnny was not drafted, and the Bucs brought him in because his brother Irvin Randall played linebacker. Anyway, so they tried him out before his rookie year. They said, nah, he's not going to be anything. Well, he goes to Minnesota, and obviously 150 sacks later, first ballot Hall of Fame. I played next to Warren Sapp and Johnny Randall, and those two guys are the best. I mean, holy smokes, those two guys are the best defensive linemen I've ever seen. But anyway, the Bucs sure missed on that one too. But anyway, I ended up getting married to Monica a week after the draft, and I'll never forget that. Denny Green was the coach who drafted me, and he's like, hey, Brad, we just drafted you. I was like, all right, coach. He goes, well, I need you up here in 2 weeks. We got minicamp. We got a rookie minicamp, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're killing me, coach. I'm getting married that same weekend, and he's like, all right, well, just postpone that wedding and come on up here. And I was like, whoa. You don't know my wife. That's not happening. Plus, everybody spent all the money. So anyway, I did the smart thing by holding out as a 10th round draft pick my rookie year. But they actually took me up earlier. And then going into that fall, we're up in Mankato State, Minnesota, and I would look like the first week. I would look at my keys every day and be like, oh my gosh, I want to go home. This is terrible. I would get out of 25 team reps, I'd get like 2 reps. I don't know why they didn't think a 255-pound nose guard wouldn't tear it up in the league. But anyway, and actually I played, I don't want to get in the weeds, but I played like under tackle at that point. Played nose at for the Bucs. But anyway, Johnny Randall was first team, and he was ahead of me, and then he actually hurt himself in a freak accident, like working out, like pulled a pec or something. So then they moved a defensive end in front of me, and then he hurt his knee. Then they moved like an offensive guard in front of me, and then he hurt his back. So going into the first preseason game, they were like, oh my God, we got to put Culpepper in. This is terrible. So I ended up leading the preseason with 5 sacks.
Nice.
So
wow.
It's kind of like leading the minor leagues in home runs. Because if you're any good, you don't play in the preseason. But anyway, I was able to get my foot in the door and make the team, and played there for 2 years. But no, as far as thinking I was going to play pro, I didn't even think about it. And 9 years later, in fact, when Hype Man was talking, you said after my NFL career, I went to law school. No, I actually went to law school while I was playing.
Oh,
NFL.
wow.
And when
okay.
when I retired in 2001, I graduated from law school the same year and took the bar in 2002. So Florida wow. was really accommodating for me. The Florida Law School, they let me come every spring. So I think starting in like 95, it took me 6 years. They allowed me to just go law school from January to May, and then obviously in the fall I was down with the Bucs and playing football. But no, I was thinking about my future at that point too. I was kind of tired of just doing nothing and playing golf. I don't know if somebody can do that now just because of the restraints of NFL. They kind of want you around all the time. But back then, you could kind of do that, and I was super fortunate, so it's all worked out.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned that 90 team, but I'm thinking 91 had to be one of your favorite years. I mean, you dominated on the D-line. You led Florida's defense with 50 tackles, earned first-team All-SEC, consensus first-team All-American. Gators go 10-2 that year, run the table in the SEC, going 7-0, finish 7th in the country. Kind of what do you attribute your personal level of success that senior year?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely had a lot of confidence coming off my junior year. It was my 3rd year starting. I'll tell you one good thing these days is I think my records will hold for a long time, just because if you're any good, you come out after your 3rd year. So all the great players who could potentially break my record.
That helps.
Are going. No, for sure. I like that rule. Although now the NIL is killing it, because I think some guys could probably make more money in college than they're going to make in pros. But anyway, the 91 team was unbelievable. We were a tight group. We'd all come in together. And, I mean, I can remember, Emmett coming back for, like, the Florida State game. He obviously been a second-year pro at Dallas. But it meant so much to him to be a part of that freshman class that I remember him running out with the flag and being on the sidelines when we played FSU. And the culmination, I think, of that year when we beat FSU, because we'd lost 4 years in a row to FSU, and to be able to beat them 14-9. I mean, that game was hot. It was in November, but it was like 105 degrees, and we beat them 14-9. And their offense was, I mean, they were averaging 45 points a game with Casey Weldon, who was a runner-up for Heisman. And in fact, I still run into people who still talk about, that 91 game against FSU. We had a big goal line stand at the end of the game, and it was. Florida had never outright, and they did it in 84 and 85, and then we did it in 90. But all these titles were taken away, and so 91 was like the first time we got a ring that wasn't issued by ourselves. It was issued by the league, and it kind of meant a lot at that point. And I think we definitely were considered the best team in Florida history at that point, and we were definitely surpassed by a couple teams, obviously since then, which is good. But it was a first, an unblemished SEC championship, an undefeated SEC, which had never happened in Florida history either. So I have nothing but super fond memories. What's fun, though, I think, and Steve does a good job of this, whenever there are kind of reunions, he always links the 90 and 91 teams together. And I'm glad he does that, because there were guys, like Kirk Kirkpatrick's one of my best friends. And in fact, I think he's the one who hooked me up with you guys.
That's right.
But Kirk was on the 90 team and MVP of the team. But, Huey Richardson, I mean, there were great, Mark Murray, there were, great players, Jerry Odom, there were great players on 90 that didn't get to be a part of like an official championship team. And Steve kind of always says, 90, 91, you're all the same, and you all need to be remembered and lauded the same way. So anyway, I kind of lumped those 2 years together.
That's cool that he does that.
That's a nice 2-year package here. So, yeah. And you mentioned earlier about that amazing run from 90 to 2010, good 2 decades of dominance, and it all started with your team. What do you think it's going to take to get us back on track? I mean, I'm deriving a little bit of joy to see our friends in Tallahassee are struggling a little this year too, but wouldn't it be really nice if we could have one of those games at the end of the season where both of us it matters to us like it was back in 90 and 91? We're both in the forefront. How are we ever going to get back there?
I don't know. I also don't mind it if we're really good and they're not. I'm okay with that too.
That's sweet too. Absolutely.
I can remember that. I can remember the mid aughts with Urban and all those groups. FSU was terrible, and Florida was just rolling.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to like the head coach. I think he says all the right things. He looks the part. But ultimately, at this day and age, your record is how you're defined, and it just hasn't gone the way we all want it to go for this guy. I mean, you really do. I mean, he seems like a good guy. I wasn't as big a fan of McElwain. I liked Muschamp. I think the expectations were probably a little bit too stiff.
Yeah.
But with Napier, I want him to succeed, and I think obviously they'll have to play out this whole season. If it doesn't turn around, I don't know if he'll make it through the season. But I think everybody wants him to succeed, so that's why it's almost double disappointing when it doesn't happen. But speaking of the old ball coach, I think I read a news feed where he was saying, well, if they don't change anything, I expect different results. If he don't change it, it's going to be the same thing. And which is kind of true. I mean, you kind of have the same team. Just watching the defensive line, play, or just the defense in general. I don't know if it's bad players or I don't know if it's bad scheme, but it's like it just doesn't work. There's no like penetration and just dominance like there used to be. And then, obviously offensively it's not clicking. Maybe that takes a second, but it just seems like we're seeing the same old things we saw the last 2 years, and which is not good.
Nope.
But I guess your question was what can they do to get back? I mean, they're going to need to stay in front of this NIL stuff and do the opposite of whatever Dabo Sweeney does. I mean, it's like portal. You need to jump in the portal all the time and be constantly recruiting your own players that you get
to keep
and
them.
Recruiting other players that you correct. Recruit the guys that you've already signed, but you got to keep recruiting them. But you also need to keep a tab because, these high school guys, it's a hard decision sometimes to choose between, Florida and Notre Dame or Michigan and Georgia and Florida and whatever. And sometimes if you can keep the connections, these guys are going to go in the portal, a lot of them. So don't quit recruiting a guy even though he signs with Georgia or he signs with, Notre Dame or whomever or Michigan, because it's a 50-50 chance that kid's going to be available in a year. And so you can pull those. So I think whoever the coach is in the next year or whatever, if it's Napier, that's great. Then he's turned the season around and it's him. But the only way at this day and age, and I think it's easier said than done, and it's the reason why a guy like Nick Saban, who's the greatest coach of all time, possibly got out of it, because it takes a different kind of strategy to be on top these days, and it definitely is not the old style of get the guy out of high school, promise the parent, Bobby Bowden approach, your kid's going to be safe with me, you're going to get a great education, and he's going to be a better man when he leaves here than when he came. That's good and all, but that doesn't mean anything now. It's all about what are my opportunities, how much NIL am I going to make, and that's about it. And so it takes somebody who's on the cutting edge of all of that and that's free, has a lot of boosters. They're able to put the money, but I don't think that should be a problem at the University of Florida. Money has never really been an issue. Heck, we were doing it when we shouldn't have been doing it. So I don't know why we can't do it when we can do it.
You're making a lot of sense here. Do you got a platform to talk to the coach, implement some of this stuff?
I'm busy chasing my own kids and doing whatever, but I'm cheering from afar.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's go back to your time at UF, 4-time academic honor roll, first team academic All-American in 91. You win the Dratty Trophy. That's like the academic Heisman.
It's actually called the Campbell Award now.
Right. It's the William Campbell Award today.
Right.
And you were also involved in student government. And so how did you find time to do all these things and excel in all of them on and off the field?
I don't know. Thinking back, I was like, oh my God. I was like, and truth be known, I ran for student government. Somebody approached me about it, and I was vice president of student body my senior year. And actually, I did it. I had an office, and I would go in. I was in charge of the cabinet. But what enticed me, and a guy named Dean Cannon, and Dean has gone on to be in politics in Florida, and I think he was Speaker of the House at some point. But Dean Cannon was the president at the time. But he came to me, and, it's very political. I was a Sigma Chi. I was in a fraternity. I pledged as a freshman when I was redshirted. And so a lot of the politics at Florida, sandbox politics, is kind of run by, I was in Florida Blue Key and all that stuff. But what you would get as vice president is a parking pass. I could park anywhere on campus.
Nice.
And I was like, so you're saying if I become vice president with you, I'll get this parking pass? And he's like, 100% right here. And I'm like, done. So I was like Kramer in the lifetime supply of coffee or something. I was like, done. Good. So anyway, I did it and I enjoyed it and met a lot of different people. I think my experience with Florida was so enjoyable because I wasn't just a jock. I wasn't just stuck in Yon Hall dorm room. And I mean, I had plenty of jock friends but I was in a fraternity. I was in student government. I had a lot of other areas that kind of just met people from different runs of life and which is, I guess, what life's all about, I reckon.
You were also team captain of that inaugural 91 SEC championship team and went on to actually win Toyota's prestigious National Leader of the Year award. What did it mean to you to be team captain of that team?
I think, well, it meant a lot back then because you got to speak at Gator Growl. I don't even know if they do Gator Growl anymore, but I remember, back then, the captain, one person would get the opportunity to speak to, 60,000 people in the stands.
Right.
and growing up, I remember going to Gator Growl. My dad would take us. I think I saw Bob Hope. I saw Bill Cosby. Obviously, that one hadn't aged well, but I think Helen Reddy. I saw the Smothers Brothers, Jay Leno. I think I saw him. But anyway, it used to be just a big deal, and so as captain, I was able to kind of speak to the. And on behalf of the whole team, and that was kind of a big deal for me. I remember hearing Wayne Peace talk and Scott Brantley talk and
quarterback.
Just all the heroes, of yesteryear speak at Gator Growl, and so I was able to do that. Then my wife won, or my fiance, yeah, maybe she was. My girlfriend won Homecoming Queen, so that was kind of cool. And it was what kind of funny about that is they announced it there, and actually, Steve, we were supposed to go up to our hotel after we kind of do the talk and before the people come on, but my wife was on the homecoming court, and they were about to crown us. So it says, we'll wait around until see what happens to Culpepper's girlfriend, see if she wins or not. So she ends up winning and gets the crown, and so they escort her to the car, because now she's going to ride around the field and then wave and do your queen wave to all the fans because she just won homecoming queen. So they had just waxed this car, and it was like a Corvette or some like coupe. So she sits down on the car, and as it starts moving, she slides all the way back off the back of the car. Really funny. This day it would have been a great meme if they had cell phones and stuff. Fell off the car.
Oh my god!
She's fine, but it was really funny. First she's like, "Wait, whoa, what?" And then she kind of got up and said, "Oh no, I'm good." Dusted off and got back on and held on.
That was like her first Survivor challenge. So she was preparing all those years before.
It
was.
Little did we know.
Well, we'll get to that. In a minute.
So being captain, that just sticks out. I think as time goes by, it's kind of fun to just, be able to say, I was captain of the 91 team. I think that resonates probably more so than saying All-American or all that other crap.
Well, you finished your career with, great stat, 227 tackles, 18 sacks, which was just outside the top 10 all-time. But you do have 47.5 tackles for losses, which is a D lineman all-time mark, and 6th all-time no matter what position you're in. Is there a play that sticks out in your memory from your time at Florida?
Well, that you say it, there's one, and this is not the one that sticks out, but I actually had another sack against Alabama. I kicked the ball out of the quarterback's hand, and he fumbled it, and we got it, but they didn't give it to me because they couldn't see it. That was one sack. I also had one in as funny as a defensive lineman in sacks. You remember, I had another one against Memphis my redshirt freshman year, and they didn't give it to me. They gave it to somebody else, and I had caused a fumble or whatever. But anyway.
So you should be inside the top 10. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
I
Unofficially,
should be.
you are.
It got taken away from me. But that sacking Casey Weldon,
nice.
who was a high school friend of mine, in my senior year against Florida State, that's the play I remember. And I've got pictures of it where I'm slamming him to the ground, and his face is all like scrunched up, going, yeah, and he's kind of got blood on his knee. So I think of all the plays, that's my favorite. It was my senior year, and we beat them finally. So there's no doubt about it. That's my favorite there.
Well, I have some NFL questions. So you mentioned your time starting in Minnesota behind the great John Randall. Obviously, you get a relationship there with Tony Dungy, who was the defensive coordinator there before he becomes a head coach. And, when you make your way down to Tampa, you had a pretty big impact there. In 6 years, you led the team in sacks twice and tackles for D linemen 4 times. A lot can be said for football players being in a good fit and finding the right coaches to put them in the best position to succeed. It sounds like you have a great deal of affection for Coach Spurrier. What can you tell us about Tony Dungy and what you think he saw in you and how he was able to maximize that and your part in one of the best defenses in NFL history?
Well, Tony's amazing. Some coaches, talk the talk as far as like their belief system, and I'm not necessarily one of those. I got a funny story about Tony, but Tony did believe, and he walked what he talked, and I respected him for that. A sidebar, funny moment, and I think if you could Google Tony Dungy telling the story, but it's better. But we were out one day and it was storming. I mean, bad lightning, or it was off in the distance or whatever else. And the lightning went off, the thunder came off, and Tony was kind of looking around to see what he needed to do. And I buzzed over to him and said, "Coach, we got to head in." And I go, some of us are a little bit, I understand you're safe if something happens, but some of us aren't. So we need to go in. And so it's done to tell the story. He goes, so Culpepper, took my whistle and blew it and ran in, and everybody followed him in. So anyway, I was like, yeah, I know you're safe, but there's some of us out here that aren't feeling real comfortable about this because I don't know that any of us are safe. He knew exactly what I was talking about.
Story.
But anyway, Tony, he was a teacher. Not only was he a coach, he was a great teacher. And I, fortunately, underneath Tony, he was my defensive coordinator in Minnesota, and then we had a defensive line coach named John Tierlink. And John has since passed. But they actually have the Tierlink Award, which is like the best defensive line coach in the NFL, gets it every year. So I was fortunate to have this guy who was a pass rush guru. I wasn't built to be a stub or a run stopper. I was built to, penetrate and be on those types of defense. So I was very fortunate that Minnesota ran that. And then when I ended up in Tampa, they ran the same, my first 2 years, they tried to with Floyd Peters, but then Tony came down and hired Rod Marinelli, and Rod, he was a mentor. He's the best coach I've ever been coached by. I loved Rex Norris at Florida, but Rod Marinelli, as far as X and O's, he was the best teacher and demanded just the very best from every single person that ever played for him. Without Rod Marinelli, Warren Sapp does not go in the Hall of Fame. Without Tony Dungy, he doesn't go in the Hall of Fame. But the combination, and then we had, Monty Kiffin. We just had Lovie Smith, Herm Edwards. We had an amazing group of coaches. Raheem Morris and Mike Tomlin. I mean, it's a who's who were coaches at Tampa Bay.
You just named an awful lot of head coaches.
No, it was unbelievable. And Marinelli was the head coach of Detroit, who went 0-16.
Detroit, yeah.
Listen, that's not easy to do. That takes quite a coach to go 0-16.
That was tough.
That is very tough. But I would say this: any coach that coached on that team, they never gave up, and to play 16 games and lose every one. I've been on some teams that have lost. I've only won like 5. I think I've been 2 times I was that way. Maybe not one. My last year with Chicago, we won 5, maybe 6. I can't remember. But I've been on losing seasons, and losing is so much worse than winning is good. And to do it 16 times when you are giving every single thing you have each week, I mean, my hat's off to those guys for just being alive, because it is miserable. So it's kind of a perverse way of thinking about it, but oh my God, the pressure in the NFL and to lose like that, oh my God. But anyway, back to the original.
Do guys check out when they're that bad and not winning any games?
It depends on who's your coach. Depends on what you care. I mean, if you have pride, no. I mean, you're competing for your job every week. Yeah, and so, I mean, some teams do, and usually those coaches get canned, before the end of the season or what have you. But in Detroit, it didn't work out for them, but they never gave up. I remember watching those games and those guys were fighting. I think John Kentner was a quarterback, and they battled every single game, even though they lost them all. But yeah, there's some guys that check out. They, usually it happens, not on that kind of losing team, but if you're not in the playoffs, and you got 3 more games left, there'll be guys that say, "Yep, no, I'm not doing it."
You mentioned your last year. You had, your solid years in Tampa, and then you mentioned your last year in Chicago, and you're actually in 2000 that year. You're reunited with Shane Matthews, former two-time SEC Player of the Year. Were you guys throwing Gator game parties up there in the Windy City?
Shane, I love Shane. So we did. We would go to there were a lot of Gator fans up in Chicago. And matter of fact, Shane and I would go to some of those functions. So it was great, being back with Shane. I love Shane. I love Shane now. He was just he was a cool cucumber. Nothing ever rattled him. I think that's why he did so well under Spurrier. Is it just, I think most quarterbacks, or I shouldn't say most, but a lot of quarterbacks are just, intimidated by him, or his instructions can be terse and straightforward, but he's real matter of fact. But a guy like Shane it was water off a duck's back. And Shane was good too, which helped. But Kyle Morris was another quarterback at the time, and Kyle could probably throw it probably harder than Shane. But I think Coach Spurrier rattled Kyle and got under his skin. But Shane was more like, okay, and Steve would get on him, but Shane would just kind of get back in the huddle and go, all right, guys, we're going to do this, and he would do it. So anyway, he was a great teammate, and I actually did really enjoy playing a year with him in Chicago.
Well, John mentioned all the accolades that you got, during your career, right? The UF Athletics Hall of Fame, Gator football All-Century First Team. As that time is kind of in the past, when you look back, what do you think about what you accomplished at UF while you were there and all those awards you won?
God, I don't think about it that much, quite frankly. I don't know. I concentrate on my law practice and my kids, and maybe as I get older or something, I'll reflect and kind of think about it. It's kind of cool having at the Hebner Center, and I'm assuming it's still there. There used to be a big kiosk with the Campbell Award in it, and Tim Tebow's in there, and there's some other great players, and then having, I guess, a brick outside where the All-American thing is. This is a little bit different, but I think I most enjoy that I was All Madden team in 1999. So I still have my All Madden jacket or sweatshirt that I wear.
Nice. That's right. I was going to bring that up. This is the first guest we've had on an All Madden team.
Right. Yes.
Very cool.
As a matter of fact, I still have in the box. I've got like the very first PlayStation or Xbox or whatever it is you played in '99. I don't do video games. I just missed my time. I was more of a Pac-Man, Galaga arcade growing up. Sure. We didn't really have video games. We had Atari. Yeah. We had Pong and stuff like that. Yeah. But I wasn't really as much. I guess my high school girlfriend had Tabletop Defender, so I would do that. But didn't really get in the football video games. So I've got a first generation Xbox or first generation PlayStation, and I've got every All Madden from like 98 to 2002 or whatever, but I've got the one where I'm on it or in it, and I've got whatever power up stuff. Because if you were an All Madden guy, they made you the best players in the league. So anyway, it's still in the box. My kids are like, Dad, you should sell it on eBay.
No way, that's a treasure.
One of your grandkids one day will dip in there and get the dust off and figure out how to play it. But anyway, that may be my favorite award.
That's pretty cool. I could see why. So you've mentioned your law firm a few times, and our largest listening audience is in the Tampa area. So if anyone out there needs any legal representation, how do they find you? Do you specialize in any particular area of law?
All they have to do is drive down the street. I mean,
you're all over.
Unfortunately, in my business, you got to advertise quite a bit to keep up with the Morgan & Morgans and
a lot of billboards and commercials out there.
There are. So I've got a lot running, and unfortunately, Tim Tebow texted me last week and with a picture of the billboard right before the game, and he's like, "Oh my God!" I go, "You're welcome." I go, not everybody in different cities are able to see my face every single day. So, but anyway, I do personal injury law, and I think most people in this area probably get it and are sick of it. They see our commercials with dogs and kids and all kinds of different stuff. So you always kind of, unfortunately, unlike, McDonald's French fries, you see a billboard for McDonald's French fries, you can go get McDonald's. But with being a personal injury attorney and auto accident attorney, I just have to be kind of omnipresent in order for someone to get in an accident and then say, oh, shit, I'll call Culpepper. He does that. So anyway, we have to advertise all the time. And when my commercials come on TV, I'm always turning them off too. So I'm always like, oh, God, I'm sick of hearing myself too.
Before we wrap up, I got to ask a little bit about Survivor. I was a huge fan of the show. Got to admit, I haven't watched in a few years, but definitely was when you were on. You talked about your wife, Monica. She was on the show first, and then you end up with her on the Blood vs. Water season.
Yeah.
So I guess my first question is, was she able to kind of help prepare you with kind of the experience that she had the first time?
Well, they actually had approached me first about doing Survivor, and so they knew I was an Eagle Scout growing up and lived on an island and the Gulf, growing up, and then obviously the football connections. then they Googled me and saw a picture of my wife and said, "Hey, why don't you and your wife consider doing Amazing Race?" And I was like, "Well, sure. I'd much rather do something with her than just go by myself." So we sent an application, and for whatever reason, Amazing Race, the same people did casting for both. And they were like, "You know what? It's a pass on the Amazing Race because we don't have a spot to fill. However, we want to getting back on Survivor. We're still interested in that." And they go, "But not for you, Brad. We're interested in your wife." So I was like, I had to convince Monica to go. She was like, the island tent, or she goes, I've never even spent the night in a tent, much less on the beach. I'm not doing that. So anyway, I strong-armed her into going. Actually went out to maybe Caladesi Island or one of these islands out here and spent the night and kind of showed her how to a little bit. And then she went out and unfortunately she got in a rough group. She was the most athletic and was a threat early on. And I think it was called One World was her first season. And so she kind of went out a little bit early, like 13th, or came in 13th place out of 20, which is interesting because then we both played together and Blood versus Water. And I went out 13th and she of course stayed to the very end and was runner up. And then when I played again, I ended up runner up in Game Changers, not long after that. So we both played 2 times. We've both been runners up. We've both been 13th out, and we played the exact amount of days, like 50. We both spent like 56 days on the island. Wow. Wow. Which is kind of crazy. So anyway, stay tuned. Who knows? They've got Survivor 50 coming up.
Maybe he'll come back.
Maybe 1 or 2 Culpeppers. Or one of our kids could be on. So you'll have to stay tuned to see what happens.
Are you breaking the news right here on the All for the Gators podcast, Brad?
Not quite, but don't be surprised. Don't be surprised.
One question I've always had is what happens, and that episode was interesting, the Blood versus Water. What happens when you get voted out early and you're not on the jury? What do you do? And also specific to your season, do you know how she's doing? Are you able to keep in touch with how she's doing since you're not on the jury?
Well, first of all, the first time she went, you have no contact with whoever plays. And so I had kids that were like 5, 7, and 9, and I had no contact with my wife for 50 days. Unlike the military where somebody can call you. So I didn't know what was happening. I about went out of my mind. She came back and I had tattoos and long hair and beards. And she's like, "What happened to you?" She goes, "I was playing Survivor," and I was like, she goes, "You have no idea how that's nothing." In fact, when I would play Survivor, I was telling everybody else that I was playing. I was like, "Listen, this is not near as bad as it is on your spouse at home." But anyway, so what happens is when you get voted out prior to the jury, you have no understanding. They take you away. So my season, they took everybody to. I didn't even go. So Monica and I were both gone, and so when I got voted out, I made Jeff. Well, I had to buy my own ticket, but I said I am not going on the non-jury trip. They went to Cambodia or something. I don't know where they went, but they take you away off the island and go somewhere else.
Stay at like a resort or something, right? That's when they pamper you at this.
They
point.
don't. Yeah, not really. I mean, sometimes you stay in hostels.
Oh.
They don't put that much money into it, but they definitely. I mean, you can eat and you can do whatever. They keep you away and sequestered so that you don't go home, so that it doesn't ruin who got voted out when.
That makes sense.
So they and then when the season's over, everybody flies back separately. So the non-jury group will go from somewhere else, and then the ones who made the jury will all fly home together. So I kind of cheated the system and left, and because I was going to get home for my kids. When they voted me out, I was like, "Buddy, I'm not staying here for some BS trip. I've got to go be with my kids and help them." So I did that.
Okay.
Instead of going on some fancy schmancy trip.
Is that like another fraternity you're in? Did you make friends and hang out with the survivors? You going over for barbecue at Jeff Probe's house? Like, what's that situation?
Yes. I mean, it's a little bit like, kind of the Bachelor situation where I think a lot of the Bachelor and Bachelorettes all kind of know each other. Yeah. I've since you played twice and I played with Ozzy and Sandra and Tony. I mean, I've played with all the, big wigs. Aris and Vitas and Tyson. Troy Zan is one of our best friends, and we see Troy all the time. He lives down in Miami. So yes, it is a fraternity, and you kind of, you keep in touch, and something funny will happen, and you'll be in a big text thread with everybody, so yeah, it's definitely another fraternity. Kind of like
All right, last one for me.
It's its own gig, kind of like NFL's kind of a fraternity, and Survivor definitely is too.
Okay, yeah. Last Survivor question. The season you made it runner-up. Obviously, you go all the way all 39 days. So how much weight did you lose? I know you were already kind of slimmed down from playing days, but how much weight did you lose on the show?
Yeah, I got down to 178, and that was down from like 205. So
Wow.
Looking at old pictures, I am shredded, but I am skinny because I think for the last 2 weeks I didn't eat very much at all. So it takes your toll. It's for real out there. You got to win challenge. Of course, I did win a lot of challenges toward the end, so I did eat somewhat. But for 39 days, you're on your own. You got to fish and be able to spear fish and eat a lot of coconuts and figure out different ways to eat the coconut. But there's no help out there, that's for sure.
They're not sneaking you off to keep the bugs away or anything, huh? You're out there in the element.
Well, as a matter of fact, they do give you lotion that does have a little bit of bug repellent in it. So they don't want you it's not Naked and Afraid where they want you to be miserable like that. And also they give you water so you can drink fresh water. It's not like you're going to get any kind of sickness with that. So
did they ask you to go on Naked and Afraid?
Is that the next show?
I would not do that. I don't mind the naked part of it, but I don't want to do that. Those guys that is miserable.
All right, we talked about you being a dominating football player. We talked about your law firm, reality TV, but there's something I want to also acknowledge your work as a philanthropist. You've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for charities and hospitals over time. Do you still do work to raise money?
God, most of it's been in public education. I feel like I've donated so much my kids all go to public school down here. And so for the past, umpteen, years, we've donated a lot to Gorey Elementary and Wilson and Plant High School. And so that's kind of been our philanthropy. Well, now that our kids are all out of college and doing their own thing, I think we'll get back into the local flair like we did before the kids were getting involved with all that other stuff.
It sounds like you're quite the Renaissance man. You got your hands in everything here. You're playing Survivor. You're an attorney. You're a football star. So what do you do when you're not preparing for trial and having fun with us here on the All for the Gators podcast? What does a fun weekend for Brad and the Culpepper clan look like for you?
Spending time with my wife. She's my best friend still. We do everything together. It was funny. This last weekend we had to run a bunch of errands for nothing. And we ended up in we were in Macy's or something looking for something. And I was like, and our daughter she's at NYU Law School. She went to NYU undergrad and played basketball, won a national championship up there.
Wow.
Division III, yeah.
Okay.
So we go to New York 20, 30 times a year. And we were in Tampa, West Shore Mall, which is terrible. And I was thinking, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, we have a good time. And so you asked me what I prefer. I prefer being with her. I'm a avid crossworder. So I do 2 to 3 crosswords a day, like the LA Times and Washington Post. So I do that for fun. I'm an avid reader. I do a lot of reading. But mostly up until now, it's been chasing kids around, watching them play football and watching them play basketball and doing all that. Those are kind of our hobbies. So now that we our kids are kind of beyond all that, I figure we'll start traveling or doing something.
Yeah, that's great. I guess the last one for me is you've been on the College Football Hall of Fame ballot a couple of times the last few years, including this year. Mm-hmm. How do we get you in?
I don't know. Talk to somebody. Listen, I feel like Susan Lucci or whatever. Hopefully, I would get in if they keep putting me up, and they keep putting me up. So hopefully, one of these days it'll happen. But I'm okay if it doesn't. But that'd be nice if it did.
It'll happen. Just better sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Right.
We're rooting for you. That's for sure.
She ended up winning I think she won her Emmy at some point. So hopefully it'll work.
She did eventually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. It's been over 3 decades since you played at UF, and a lot of great football players have been through the program since you left. Who are some of your favorites that you've watched over the years?
Well, I got to know those the 06, 07, 08, 09, all the Urban Meyer years. I got to know all those guys pretty well, Spikes and, so that crew, Tim, obviously, who I met and it was super nice was Aaron Hernandez. I feel so bad about what all happened. But I'm obviously I wasn't connected to all the problems he was having, but he was a yes sir, no sir guy, and was a heck of a player, at Florida.
For sure.
But I kind of have an affinity for all those guys. Urban would have me come speak to the team twice, like right in the preseason, and then he'd pick a game, FSU game or whatever. Matter of fact, they gave me a ring in 06 when they won the champ. I didn't really want it, but it was like Alumni of the Year award. So I have affinity for those guys. I know it sounds kind of cliche, when you say like Tim Tebow and those guys, but I got to know them pretty well, and they were. I ran into one of the players up in Asheville, North Carolina, and he came up to me and said, "Mr. Culpepper, I was on that team. It was unbelievable. All those speeches you gave, you were great." Blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know. That meant a lot to me. I was like, I had a good time with all those guys, and they were great. They were great football players. But I used to have we'd go talk to them and just say, guys, don't be idiots. What? Submachine guns. You got to have submachine guns. You guys, anyway, I was able to talk kind of straight up with them about what was important and what wasn't. And I would, like all the D-line, I'd say, "Oh, you fat guys here." I go, "You can't touch my record. This little skinny white boy's got all the records here, and you guys can't touch me."
That's great.
I said, "You should be embarrassed."
Man, that's great.
So, anyway, I had a good.
We didn't know. I mean, we don't know this stuff that alumni like yourself are going back during those championship years and influencing the players like that. And I mean, that's cool to hear that the program was having, bringing you back and having you be a part of that.
Yeah, no, I think they need to keep doing that. It was important.
Yeah,
I think it all worked. I think, it meant a lot to the team, and for whatever reason they were able to do it. So hopefully they'll get back to that.
All right, Brad, we usually end in a bit, and we're going to have you do a Mount Rushmore of Florida Gators defensive linemen. Are you ready?
Okay.
So you got four spots up there on the Mount Rushmore.
And you are allowed to include yourself. You are definitely worthy.
No, okay. I kind of I'm trying to do old school guys. Like maybe Tim Newton, and Jack Youngblood.
Of course.
Ooh, real old school.
And
well, you gotta have Jack.
I'm trying. You got like David Galloway.
Okay.
He was a great player, and I'll put Jeff Roth on there. He would like that. I don't know where he is, but if he was a nose guard and he was all SEC and a good player when I got there, and it's too easy for me to say Trace. I've already given him laud, so I'll put Jeff Roth on there. I guarantee nobody else put him on there. So that's four.
Yeah,
right?
That's four.
That's a good one.
That's
Brad Culpepper's old school Mount Rushmore defensive linemen. Tim Newton, Jack Youngblood, David Galloway, and Jeff Roth.
Yep.
Brad, man, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on with us and hear your stories. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
You got it, guys. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of fun living the old times.
Oh.
My wife's now telling me I need to go to bed. So
I'm surprised Andy didn't ask her to come on.
Yeah, it's not too late.
No, maybe next time.
She was awesome. She was awesome on the show.
She was.
Wow, another stellar episode with another stellar Gator great.
Wow,
yeah, he was great.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, what an interesting.
He might have
guy.
the best Spurrier impression for sure. He's definitely a leader in the clubhouse in my book. That was.
You know what I liked about it? I liked how he wove it into his stories. It wasn't just here's my Spurrier's impression.
Right.
It was
through the
kind of
stories,
organic.
it turned.
Yes.
He turned into Spurrier in the story.
He channeled him. Bonus points for channeling his inner Spurrier.
All right, let's do our 2 bits, guys.
Who's first?
I'll go first. I got a different one this time.
Let's hear it.
He gave me homework, so I'm going to use that as going to be my 2 bits. I want to go see Willie McGrady. I was not aware of Willie McGrady and the amazing player that he was, and that he was the fullback for Emmett during Emmett's breakout. So I want to go see that. And then, he mentioned he also played nose guard in the same game.
Iron Man, yeah. That's great.
But when he says that he would have whooped Eric Rett, I got to see it. I got to see this guy. So I am going to take the homework that Brad Culpepper gave me, and I'm going to go watch that game with Willie McGrady. So that's my 2 bits.
Good one.
Maybe that's something to put up on the site once we find that there. Let our friends at home, our friends of the show, check that out too.
All right, I'll go next.
You could edit that out if you don't want to do that.
I didn't hear what you said. What did you say, Sid?
I said we could put that on the website so the friends of the show can see that. But if I said, you could edit that part out if you don't want to do that.
Well, something I'd like to do in the future is do like All for the Gators podcast remembers so-and-so, players that have passed on that had an impact on the program, that we could have some of their teammates on to tell stories about them, maybe family member. And maybe he could be one of those.
I like that. Look at the super producer, always thinking of great ideas for the show. I love it.
All right, let me do my 2 bits now, and then we'll keep Sid for last. Cause
that's where I belong. I understand. Put baby in the corner. I got you.
You ready for my 2 bits?
Ready.
Loser gets beans.
Yeah, but you got to say it with the Spurrier.
I can't do impression.
Shrimp.
Scrimps. Some scrimps.
Loser gets beans. I don't know. I can't do it. Loser gets beans. That Spurrier wrote on the board. Winners get steak and scrimps. I love that. I love that.
Orange versus blue. Loser gets beans.
I'll tell you what. I am going to use that with my boys, my kids, going forward for the rest of my life. Loser gets beans. That's it.
I like that.
Winner gets scrimps.
That's right.
Top that one, Sid.
I don't think I can, but I'm just amazed with how busy this gentleman must have been when he was in college. I mean, obviously, he was studying law, not an easy subject. He was winning the academic Heisman. He was finding time to be in a fraternity, finding time to be on a football team, finding time to date the homecoming queen. Wow.
Student government? Did you say that?
I think I did, but we could reiterate that.
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
very, very impressive. So I got to say, I'm visualizing he's like Michael Keaton in Multiplicity, and there's like 5 Brad Culpeppers running around Gainesville doing all these things, because I'm exhausted. I guess he never sleeps. That was just, my 2 bits is, wow, Brad Culpepper, hats off to you. Very impressive on and off the field.
We didn't even cover that he got his bachelor's after his junior year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And working on law school between football seasons. Like, what? That's
the pros.
That's amazing.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on Sid's before we close the show. All these accolades. I mean, there's just so many that he achieved, and awards and Hall of Fames and in the pro, and all of this in his life. And you could really tell when he was talking throughout the show that his favorite achievement was his wife and his kids.
His family.
He's very devoted.
Family first, yeah, for sure.
I just thought that was a cool underlying theme throughout the show. That was really evident.
Absolutely a family first guy, which is awesome.
Yes, much respect.
Man, Brad Culpepper. Whew, what a roster we have, guys, of guests, Gator greats on this show.
And I want to remind our friends out there to take their families to go to our friends at the Pontoon Brewery. Great place to watch a Gator game and just go have a nice beer.
Yeah, 5,000 square foot brewery, tap house in Sandy Springs, Georgia. If you're not in Georgia, it's okay. Check your Publix, check some restaurants. Pontoon Brewing, they got a bunch of different kinds of craft beers. A lot of fun names and a lot of fun events, too. So look them up at pontoonbrewing.com. Man, I was just about to get fired up because of our roster of guests. I would put it against any podcast out there, any Gators podcast. I don't care if it's a University of Florida podcast. I don't care
any college football podcast. We got some stars.
College football.
Coming with the thunder. Yeah.
Nobody can match us. Nobody.
Wow.
If you put the roster of guests that we've had against anybody else, we'd be number one.
Well, aren't we number one? I already assumed we were. Okay.
We're number one in everybody's hearts.
Okay.
That's right.
That's what my mom's always telling me. Yes.
I think we're like number 3 or 4, but that's okay. We're still climbing.
We're climbing.
Every day.
The relentless pursuit of perfection, as Lombardi would say.
That's right. I think we've talked long enough.
Yeah, all right. Well, that'll do it. Go Gators.
And ending on Vince Lombardi is a good way to do it. I like it.
That is nice.
All right, guys. Go Gators.
Go Gators.